Stay tuned. Bridges starts now.
I want to welcome you to Bridges. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Today we're going to talk about the truth about inside crime, and more specifically the connection between gangs and human trafficking. And before we go any further and I introduce my first guest to you today, I want to let you know that this is a very adult topic. If you have children in the room, I'd ask that you get them in another room, get them busy with something else, or perhaps record the program so that you can watch it at a later time. My guest today goes by the name of Bishop. He wears a disguise, and I'll let him explain why in the work that he does that's necessary. Bishop, I want to welcome you to Bridges today.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having us.
Well, I'm glad to have you. You know, when I look at this book that you wrote that talks about the inside truth about organized crime, both sides of the fence, you're wearing a mask. Let's start there. Why the need for the disguise?
Well, I didn't plan to write a book and come out. I mean, it was just an amazing journey that led me to here. I grew up in a Pentecostal church with praying parents, you know, middle class to upper class society, and I got mad at God for some things in my early 20s. My mother was just a great praying Christian and stayed on her face, and she ended up having an accident, passed away, and I got mad, like a lot of people do, and you blame God, shake your fist, say I'm done. And because of that, I went completely to the other side. I got involved in organized crime, ended up doing a stint in prison. And, but in that time, I got saved, and I met the God of my mom, the one my mom knew, but I'd never had a relationship with. So from that, the Department of Justice offered me a job because they had a gang problem, and I happened to know about them. So I went back in the gang, worked for a period of time on an organized crime case that we thought we were selling guns and drugs, and we found out we were selling people. And once I had to turn everybody over and the case ended, now there's a hit out on me, and I can't let people know who I am.
All right, so you have to disguise, because when you went undercover in this gang and then they found out that it was you.
Right.
So they would want to obviously kill you and harm you if they found you. Now, when you go undercover, and you shared that you did some prison time yourself, when you go undercover and you're thinking that you're looking for the sale of weapons and drugs, but you find out it's people. I mean, you know, I take a pause at that, and most of us aren't aware, Bishop, that trafficking, human trafficking, is at the level that it is. Tell me what level it's at. How big is the problem?
We have 27 million slaves worldwide right now, which is more than what we've ever had in history. I think the number's a little overwhelming when you hear that.
27 million, absolutely. And is it mostly in other countries?
No, it's here. And that's the thing. I mean, it is everywhere, but it's broken down. Labor trafficking, sex trafficking, you know, it goes on. But here in the United States, it's a $9.5 billion industry worldwide.
$9.5 billion?
Yes.
In the United States?
In the United States.
From the sale of people?
Yes.
And you work now to help make people aware and to help slaves be rescued?
We do. I work with Trafficking in America Task Force, and we work on education prevention to stop the demand of trafficking, and just letting people know that it's out there. It's a $32 billion a year industry. That's more than Google, Starbucks, and Nike. Then from that, we have 2 active rescue teams that are domestic, that here in the United States, we have a rescue line that you can call 24 hours a day, and we work with local law enforcement and federal law enforcement to implement a plan to go and rescue these kids. And it's boys and girls. I think a lot of time when you close your eyes and you think of a victim, you always think the girl, but the guys are just as valuable. I mean, we had a case where there was a 4-year-old boy duct taped and shipped to a hotel to meet with a businessman, dropped off, and then he was back home. The guy who purchased the kid was back home with his family that evening, you know. But
back home with his family?
Right.
So you're saying then people that kind of look like everybody, business people, people that look normal, are participating?
Right. It's at every level of society. It's not, we don't get the privilege of seeing them dressed up in a monster suit, and we know to avoid that.
Right.
I mean, it could be your neighbor, it could be someone working at your church, and that's what we do. We try to educate people on the signs. That way they know what to look for, and they know how to teach their kids to avoid it. And And to be honest, I think a lot of it is just start being parents again. You know what I mean?
I
Start. God help us.
Yeah. And you're emotional about this because it breaks your heart. And the reason that I wanted us to do this program and this interview with Bishop today is his deep commitment to make people aware, for parents to be parents again and to watch over your children and to set limits and watch what they're doing and what they're doing on Facebook. I wanted to give you a moment to just, how can we be aware and how can we be better parents? Because Bishop, most normal people don't ever grow up and think, I'll get married and start a family so that my kid can be sold into sex slavery. How do we see the signs? How do we help?
If your kid starts being withdrawn from you or starts hanging out with a totally different crowd, starts using words like trick or John or, I don't know how to explain. You gotta start being dad and mom. Don't let the Xbox or the PlayStation babysit your kid.
Right.
You get involved with their life. Let them know that you love them, and that way they'll open up to you and be honest with you. Mm-hmm. If they have a social media account, whether it's Pinterest, Facebook, whatever, know who they're talking to, know what they're doing. Put those parental blocks on them. And if they accept a friend, know who that friend is. If you don't know them, because the person they think's a 14-year-old, when they go meet them at the park 2 miles down the road, could be the 55-year-old that puts them in a dog cage. I mean, that's how serious this is.
Right. And what you're really saying and what you talk about in this book, both sides of the fence, about your experience being undercover and then being found out in the disguise and educating now, is that if parents are not keeping really close tabs, then our children could be on Facebook or Pinterest and meet a friend or somebody they think is a friend and not mention it to mom or dad, and then go out and meet that person and end up being abducted.
Correct.
Is that a major way that it happens?
That is, and then with the gangs, what you have, gangs are recruiting kids at 8 years old, so that kid's in the school with your kid, right?
Wait, like gangs recruit children to be a part of the gang?
They start grooming the kids about 8 years old to be in the gang. So if I'm in a gang and I've got a male son, then I'm going to grow him up in what I do. That's what you do. That's your identity, right? Uh-huh. So you grow this kid up, and you're grooming him, and then he finds the girl at the school, and he starts telling her, hey, just come on over, we're having a party. Next thing you know, she doesn't go home. She's sent on a trafficking route through the gang from one state to another state. And then at that point, it's multiple, gang rapes over and over, 60 times, 40 times a night. And they get them hooked on drugs, all this. And the statistics say by Polaris Project, Department of Justice, everybody, is that it's a 7-year lifespan. So once these kids get involved, we've got 7 years to act, So we should act on the front end.
Absolutely.
To stop it from happening altogether.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that it might be something as seemingly innocent as I send my 8-year-old to school, and if I'm not keeping tabs of whose house that they're going to, they could go home to a gang-related home without me even knowing it and end up being abducted that way.
Again, it's let the parents be parents again. Yeah. Meet the other parent. Know who your kids are hanging out with,
Yeah, and these are important things. I mean, I think of my own life growing up. I never went to anybody's house but that my mom or dad didn't call those people, make sure those parents were going to be home, who those parents were, and you're saying that that's one thing that we can do. You also shared with me, Bishop, just how lucrative this is to sell children. What are people making off of a child?
One child for the year is $250,000, and that's an average, Yeah. And the beauty of that for the gang member is if I'm selling cocaine or I'm selling guns, that's a one-time transaction, and it's big-time jail time, if I get caught with it. But with a kid, I can put the kid in a hotel room. I'm on the other side of town, and over and over and over, the Johns are calling in to Backpage.com, or, there's all kinds of prostitution websites that we can put these kids on, and you just sell them out. And when they get found out, most of the time, we lock them up in America as a prostitute. So the trafficker is never even in the picture, so they can get away with it. So it's a safer transaction for them too, not to mention it's more profitable.
And that's horrible too. We are out of time. I want to thank you, Bishop,
Thank you so
for
much
coming
for having
today
me.
and for sharing. We've got a lot more for you on the show today. Join us as Bridges as we go and we take a look at some of the survivors of trafficking and what they're doing to help rescue others from slavery.
In Genesis 50:20, Joseph sees his brothers for the first time after they've sold him into slavery, and he tells them what they intended for evil, God used for good. And that is still true for people today, and you're about to meet a sex trafficking survivor who has an amazing story of how God really used pain in her life to change the lives of many people.
It's what I do. I love to do it. And I'm really good at it too.
Sheila Simpkins helps women escape trafficking.
I'm like the initial person that they meet because I had the same history as them for the majority of the women. And so what I normally do is I try to build that trust.
She has her own story of abuse and hope.
I come from a very dysfunctional family. My mom got divorced from my dad when I was like 3 months old, and had been married 4 times by the time I was 14 years old. And at the age of 6, I started getting molested by my mom and different men that she would bring home.
Simpkins says at age 14, she had gotten tired of what was going on at home and ran away. It was then she had her first experience being trafficked for sex.
I met a boy who I really thought was my boyfriend. I really did, you know. It felt like he was my boyfriend. I was getting love that I wasn't getting at home. I was getting a different kind of love that I was not able to get at home. I wasn't getting beat up at the time. In the beginning of it, I wasn't getting beat up. And the next thing you know, I need you to do me a favor. You just do this one time, because right now we're broke. And it just kind of went on like that.
Simpkins was put in different group homes and her boyfriend was later killed. She began prostituting herself to pay for a bad addiction she had developed.
And so I started working in a strip club as a waitress, and it led into me stripping and stuff. And that's whenever I met this really beautiful guy. He was beautiful, and he sold me a dream. And the next thing you know, I was being trafficked across the country.
Simpkins says it was then she felt like she was really being trafficked because she was unable to get away from the pimp.
He was out there watching us, and if I didn't make a certain amount of money, I'd get my head busted open.
Eventually, Simpkins knew she needed out.
I just had enough, okay? You get to a place where, okay, fear keeps you locked there, okay? I was done. You know, I just wasn't willing to do it anymore, and I was willing to accept whatever I had to accept to get away. And this was my going away gift, is this scar right here, this scar right here, this scar right here. And I was done. But my reality is that I still stayed on the streets. I stayed on the streets for about 7 more years because I had my addiction that I was still feeding.
In 2004, Sheila says she hit rock bottom and got herself into a program for several years.
Whenever I first got clean, I had real bad resentments towards God because I could not understand why He allows such bad things to happen to such innocent children, you know? But I've come to realize, and I'm okay with it now, you know, it's all part of the plan. And I thank Him now, because guess what? My life is really, really good.
Today, Simpkins is a wife, a mother, and intervention specialist at End Slavery Tennessee. She works devotedly to save women in hopes that they won't have to go through all the things that she has experienced.
I just think that it's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
You know, I really do, because sometimes I just think it's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. I think that God had a plan for me, you know, and this was my plan. And so kind of like my whole past kind of makes sense now. Okay, like, okay, all right, now I get it. Okay, now I get it.
For Bridges, I'm Rachel Markin.
Don't touch your remote. We'll be right back.
If you would like to contact WHTN, you can write to the address on the screen or call us at 615-754-0039 or visit us on the web at www.ctntv.org.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
The work of Christ in our lives is not just a surface work. It goes deep down into the core of who we are. And the joy that Christ wants to produce in our lives is a joy that is of substance.
To schedule Monica to speak at your next event, contact her at monicaspeaks.com.
Welcome back to Bridges.
We are so glad that we could give you the opportunity to meet Sheila, to hear about her story of being a survivor of human trafficking and coming to the point that she's an intervention specialist, and you can see that she's doing so well. And that's why it's so important as we talk about human trafficking today, that we realize that these are real people that can be rescued and that humans and their lives are waiting to be rescued and to be utilized in greater ways. And right now we're going to meet the president of Abolition International, and it's so good, Stacia, to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Now tell me first, we've been talking about human trafficking throughout this program. What is Abolition International?
Well, Abolition International is an organization that was started to really focus on the restoration of those coming out of sex trafficking and exploitation, to look for opportunities to focus on the hope of the situation instead of just always focusing on the darkness.
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of the things that I was telling you, that, you know, obviously this program is about a really serious subject, and it can seem so heavy and so burdensome to people. I mean, when you hear about somebody getting, you know, sold into slavery or, you know, sex trafficking, that sort of thing, you just think, okay, well, if we did rescue them, you know, what is the hope? And that's why I wanted us to be able to share Sheila's story, because she's doing so well.
Right.
So help us understand about the recovery and how you work with people.
Right. Well, it's a long process. First of all, a lot of the survivors that we work with have really gotten to such a place in their life that they're kind of used to hopelessness. And so the idea of hope is so far-fetched for them to even believe in. So I think when you're working in this field, you have to be very patient, because it is a process for them, and there's a lot of healing and a lot of just different steps that go into them realizing that they don't have to continue to be defined by the past of their life, but they have an opportunity for a hope and a future.
So you're saying that it takes a lot of patience and a lot of close work.
Right.
Like I would imagine, you know, with Sheila, she's doing so well, and we look at that, but that doesn't happen in a day.
No, it doesn't. And I think we have this misnomer of the idea that you rescue these women and children, and in every situation they run and they jump in your arms and they're so happy to be rescued. And I think, you know, over the past almost 8 years that I've been doing that, initially I think I expected that, because you hear of the bondage and the darkness and the just horribleness of the situation they're in. It makes sense that they would want to be rescued. But they, in a sense, have resolved themselves that this is who they are, it's what they're for, it's just what they do. And there's deep ties sometimes to the people that they work with in the sex trafficking situation. And in a strange kind of way, a lot of times they're very connected to those people. And it's hard for them to want to get out of that, because we have to understand that in a lot of situations, it wasn't someone that just was kidnapped and put into a really bad situation. This was part of their life. The exploitation and the abuse and neglect happened in a lot of circumstances very early on. It's all they ever knew. So what you and I think of as normal, in a lot of cases, they didn't have that idyllic kind of childhood and upbringing, and then go to something terrible and then want to go back to what they had before. It was leaving something bad and falling into something worse. So it's a process, and the trauma counseling and the program piece is so vital to the health and the rehabilitation of that individual.
I think too that it's hard for us to understand because we haven't been there. You know,
Right.
that if I was in that situation and that is really all I knew, or I knew it for many years, I wouldn't have hope for
Right.
another kind of future because that's what I knew.
Right.
And however, whatever I had to do to learn to live within that situation and whatever type of exploitation and all of the dark things that go on, our hearts get calloused over time, and it's kind of what I would think would come to expect. And then it would be frightening to be rescued and to have everybody think that we're going to jump up and down and be so happy and be just like you.
Yeah.
And they don't
well,
feel just like us because they've gone through all that abuse.
Exactly, and the other thing is the trust relationships are very much damaged in their lives. And so they've been taught in a lot of circumstances and situations not to trust law enforcement, not to trust people working in the field. So the trust, you know, relationships just aren't there for them. And I had a victim recently tell me that when she was little, she had a situation of abuse occur in her life, and she went to a authority figure in her life, a parent, and said, "This has happened to me." And she was little, like 5 or 6 years old when this happened. And her parent basically said, "It's just the way it is, get over it." And at that point, because the parent didn't respond, the protection was not there, it really set her up for a lifetime of not trusting people to take care of her. And so that has been a process in their life. And so trust is very damaged. So that's difficult.
Yeah, and trust doesn't come in a day.
Right,
Especially
exactly.
when you've endured a lot of abuse and been exploited on many different levels, you know, just personally and sexually and all the things that people go through. I'm aware though too, Stacia, as when we talk about Abolition International and the goal of, you know, ending sex trafficking, a lot of people aren't aware that it is the huge problem that it is, and those that are might feel like, you know, we're at such a place in time that we might not ever be able to bring it to an end. Could you address those issues?
Yes, I think one of the things is there's this drive to talk about the numbers because we want people to understand the magnitude of the problem. So we talk about large numbers, 27 million, 100,000. And when you look at those numbers, it does feel overwhelming. And I think we have to kind of step back from that and look at, you know, focusing on one person at a time, how you can help one person at a time. And so for the restoration piece of what abolition does, we look at programming and how that helps that one person and how it plants seeds so that they can reach out to other people. But additionally from that, we've been very interested in the past several years of looking at prevention projects and diversion projects. And we're really excited that we've gotten involved in some outreach programs in juvenile detention, because what we're finding is a number of the kids that are exploited and through the sex trade and through survival sex strategies on the street, runaways and kids that are just in bad situations are being brought into juvenile detention for other reasons. And so a lot of times outreach and diversion type programs can keep them from entering back into an unsafe situation and educate them on the risks. And I think that, you know, abolition, while on one hand, yes, we definitely want to address the issue on the back end to make sure that people are receiving the help that they need, we also want to look at how do we stop this?
Yeah, and what are some ways? I mean, how do we stop this? Or Stacia, like maybe somebody watching says, you know, I didn't realize it's that many millions of people and I can't help all those people, but maybe I could be a part of one person's help.
Right.
Or one person getting prevented from going down that path where they're in sex trafficking. What are practical things that people can do?
Well, I always tell people, look in your own community. Because I think there's been this kind of rush in this issue to always do things internationally, and we know we're one world and that we can contribute internationally, and you know we work internationally as well. But you can start in your own local community, because the great thing about the media attention that the issue has gotten is that it's caused more local communities to take a look at the issue right where they are. And so there's a lot of opportunities for people to get engaged. And it starts in terms of, I always say to churches, for instance, when they contact me and say, we want to get involved, we're going to build a house. I say, before you do that, look at the root causes. If there are, you know, areas in your community where there's a lot of single moms, there's a lot of risk factors, go there. get involved in that community with those children, with those families, to help them have the resources so that some of the issues that drive sex trafficking never arise in that community. So, you know, getting involved where you are at the grassroots level is vital to really stopping.
So what you're really saying is that before somebody tries to take on a big project of building a house, maybe to be a part of a single mom's ministry, because those kids of that single mom might be more likely to become involved in sex trafficking or getting sold or running away and falling into that lifestyle, that's a way to be helpful.
Right. Well, we know internationally that what drives sex trafficking a lot of times is poverty. And we're really no different here in the U.S. You know, poverty is a big issue, lack of education and abuse and neglect. So there's just certain...
And that's in every community.
Yes, and there's certain pockets where that's more likely than in other areas. And so being aware of those factors, those risk factors, and then planting yourself if you have the resources to do that, whether that's with your time, your talents, your treasures, whatever that looks like, planting yourself there really can make a difference.
Well, thank you so much for coming and for sharing today.
Yes.
We sure appreciate it, and we just encourage you to get involved on your local level and help wherever you can. We are completely out of time today. We've got to go, but we say goodbye and God bless you.
If you would like to contact WHTN, you can write to the address on the screen or call us at 615-754-0039 or visit us on the web at www.ctntv.org. If you would like to purchase a copy of today's show for $15, you can send a check to the address on your screen or call us at 615-754-0039. Be sure to mention the program number on the screen.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org. Prayer changes things. If you need prayer, write to the address on the screen. Call 615-754-0039 or email prayer@ctntv.org.
Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Monica Speaks TV today.
Does my nose
Why
look too
can't I
big?
be taller?
Will I ever be able
Do
to
I look
cover
too
that
old?
fit? In her book, Does This Make Me Look Fat? And Other Questions That Need to Be Answered in the Mirror of God's Word, author Monica Schmelter gives biblical insights that encourage women and girls to reject worldly standards of beauty and instead look into the mirror of God's Word to redefine their lives and beauty.
This book was meant for me and every other girl who has looked in a mirror and said, I wish my, you fill in the blank, was smaller, bigger, or just plain different. This book is practical, biblical truths that can and will help you change the way you view yourself in the mirror.
Order your copy today.
Thanks for watching Bridges.